Hello there. My name is Divine Seed, and today I would be presenting and explaining the parts of the class diagram for the bookstore project, phase 4, for CSC 360 at ASU. So, one of the most important parts that we're going to first discuss is the user. The user plays a very fundamental role in any application, especially this one. And there are many things that the user has. For example, the user has an ID, and the ID is an int. It's a number that helps us to identify the user. This would help us to make sure that the user is unique, because a lot of times users would have either the same first name, the same last name, and in some instances they have both. So it's very important for us to have a user ID that is unique to a certain user. Then we have the username. So the username is very unique. Like what I was mentioning before, how users can have a first and last name, but they cannot have the same username. It's the same thing with the password. And the user has these two main functionalities. They can log in and they can log out. If they don't have an account, this is assuming that the user has an account. But if they don't have an account, they can create one. So there are many roles that a user plays. There is the seller, there's the admin, and there's the buyer. So I will first start off with the seller. The seller has many different roles. One of the main roles that it has is the ability to add a book. And add book is very, very important. Like as we go down here, we can see what a book is according to the program. So each book has an ID because there are some books that have the same name, some books that may have the same author. So it's very important for us to have an identification number to know, to make it unique, like to know which book is which one has the unique personalities, because not all books have the same of everything. So it's very important for us to know that. So in the books, there are many different things that a book has. It has a book ID, has a title, it has an author, which is a list because there could be one or more authors. And then we have a publisher. So a publisher can be a string. Most of the times there are one publisher. They could be two, but a lot of the time there's just one publisher. And then we have the original price. So the original price is just pretty much like as it says, the original price. And we have the sell price, which is a float. Both of these are floats because when it comes to prices like money, they could be decimals. Oftentimes, like some books can be $12.99, some books can be $8.99. So that's where the float comes in. And the reason why these two are different is that the sell price often determines like is often be determined by different factors, one of which is the condition of the book. There are three major conditions of the book. There's the new, there's used, and there's heavily used. And based off of these conditions, that can affect the sell price. Another thing is the availability. Like for example, if the book is available, obviously there's no sell price, and as well as the amount of copies of the book as well. So that way they can determine the sell price. And how much the book is in demand oftentimes will determine the sell price. So then this is the category. So there are different types of categories. There are fiction, there is non-fiction, and many more. And then we have the sell ID. So the sell ID, like, often just identifies who is the seller, and that is an int. Then there's the availability. So the availability is just pretty much true and false. Is this book available? And then we have the copies. Then we're saying that if this book is available, then there's this many copies, meaning that there has to be one or more than one copies for it to be available. If the copies is 0, then the book is not available. And then we have the condition. Like I mentioned before, the condition can be used, heavily used, and new. Then we have the compute price. Oftentimes this compute price will determine the sell price. So the compute price will look at the various conditions of the book, the availability of the book, and how much the book is in demand. And that would often determine the sell price. And then if we go here to the author, because one of the main attributes of a book is the author, and then we have the author ID, and that one is an int. And then we have the first name, which is a string, and we have the last name, which is a string. Usually the first and last name are one word, but some people have many. But in most instances, we only have one. And then we have the book category. So we have the category. So we have the category ID. So the category ID just pretty much tells you the identification number assigned to the category. And that is a int. And we have the category name. This is a string. This is the name of the category. And then we have this thing called order items. So a book is an order item. So the order item ID. So like for example, one buyer picks one book, that's one order item ID. If another buyer buys the same book, that's a different order ID. Just because it's the same book does not mean that the order ID will be the same. And then we have the book ID. The book ID is often by this ID, so this ID comes into here, and now they will determine what book it is, and it will give us the various information down below, like the title, the author, and many more. Then we have the order. So with the order, there could be many different order IDs. Like this person can buy one book, can buy two of the same book, can buy one and a different book. So the other is the order. And then the people that can place an order is the buyer. The buyer has the ability to place an order, and they can place one. They have one order, and they can have many different items. And the order, there is this thing called an order ID. And when you have an order, you're going to be displayed the order ID, which is an int. You have the buyer ID, which is often the user, like that has the ability to buy. And we have the books. So it's like we have the books, and then we also have the order dates, because a lot of times, like let's say a user bought a book at a certain date and wants to return it. Some companies will have like if this book, if you bought this book within a certain amount of days, then you can get a refund. If it exceeds it, then it can't. And also for record purposes, you want to know who bought which book at which dates. Then the buyer has the ability to remove a book from an order, and can add a book from an order. And then we have the order itself. So the order has the ability to buy a book, and to place orders, which is very important. And they have the ability to search. So when they search, there are two main search functionalities in our application. There's a filter. So the filter pretty much has the conditions alongside with the categories. So if the user puts like fiction and they want it new, they can check the box, the fiction section and the news section, they can print out. Or if they want the fiction and they want to see the prices for the new versus the old or the used, then they're able to see and they can make a comparison. Or even the heavily used, and it will do all the fiction books in those three categories if it please. And then at the bottom, there's this thing called a search feature. So the search feature gives the user more flexibility. So they can search by the title of the book. They can search it by the author. So a lot of times, if they don't remember the book but they remember the author, they can search it up and it will pop up different books that author has made, and various things like that. Hello, my name is Divine Seed, and today I would be making a demonstration video for the bookstore Phase 4 project for CSE 360. And this video is a demonstration and a description and explanation of how this class diagram works. And with this, we're first going to start off with the user. The user serves a very important role in this application and also in any application. A lot of software is built for the user. That's the people that's going to be using the software. And this application plays no difference. So in this application, in the bookstore application, the user plays a many different roles. 3 main roles to be exact. So the user could be a seller, the user could be an admin, or the user could be a buyer. So we're first going to start off with seller on top. So with this, the user could add a book. And with this, that's the main role of the user. They add books, they can manage books. And if we go to the books, there's this thing called a book ID. So everything has an ID, has an identification number. So book has an identification number. And this identification number makes sure that the title, the author, the published date, everything matches with that identification number. So when you look at this book, we have the title, which is a string. We have the author, which can be a list because they could be one author or they can be many. There's a publisher. This can be a string. So oftentimes there's one publisher. Sometimes it can be many. Sometimes there's one publisher. There is an original price. So the original price is a float because some books can be decimals, like $5.99, $8.99. They can be decimals instead of whole numbers. The sell price. So the reason why the sell price is different from the original price is mainly due to the book condition. So typically if the book condition is used or heavily used, the price can change usually. The original price often showcase it's being new or how much the bookstore is originally sold the book for. So oftentimes they can be a sale, a promotion, but that is what the original price is. And the sell price can do the condition of the book, whether it's new, heavily used, that is what that is. And the category. So the different categories of books, as we all know, there's fiction, there's nonfiction, there's historic, there's many different types of genres of books. There's horror, and then we have the seller ID. So oftentimes the seller ID in this case is the user. So the user also has their own ID, and with that they have their own seller. So the seller ID and the user ID, they're pretty much the same. They will have their own ID, and then with that, with the ID, you're able to say the reason why the ID is important is because the bookstore needs to know who bought the book and where the book was from and who added the book into it. And then we have the availability. So this availability is just a true and a false. Is the book available or not? And the copies. So the copies is more of if the book is available, how many copies are there? If it's 0, then it's obviously not available. And the condition of the book. Like I was mentioning before, there's the conditions. There's 3 major conditions: used, heavily used, and new. And then there's the compute price. So this is a method. So this often the compute price often would determine the sell price, and the sell price is often determined by the original price, with the condition of the book. Also, it can also kind of count with the availability of the book too, or the copies of the book as well. For example, if there's no books available, then obviously there's no price. And then if there's very few books but high demand, we're doing economics here, then the price might go up, and then so now we go to the author. So the books are many different parts that we talked about. We talked about the author ID. The author is different from the seller. Even though the author could be a seller of the book, but usually in the bookstore, when the bookstore reaches out to the author to sell their books, often the author is like a separate person. For example, if you have a book that is fiction, for example, and it's called Call of the Wild by Jack London. Jack London is his own separate person. He doesn't work for the bookstore. He's not a seller of the bookstore. He could be a seller, but in this case, he's not. So we take his books and we reach out to him. We get all this information, the ID. The reason why we have the ID is because like oftentimes authors might have the same first name, might have the same last name, or even both. So it's very important to have a separate ID to categorize which author made which book. And we have the categories, so we have the category ID. So like just like all the things here, they have an identification number that we use to know like the category it's in, and we have the category name. So like yeah, like fiction, nonfiction, and various types. And then here we have the order number. So with this order number, oftentimes like one of the main things about a bookstore is having the order, and like we have the order number, so the items. So in this case, with the order item, the book is an order item. So that is why we have this line, and then the order they have something called an order item ID, which is different from the order ID. So just an order item ID because an order ID can have many different types of books and based off of the various books and in the series or the quantities, like you can have one or more books, and they could be different books, and that would determine the order, the order the order item. And then with those combinations of order items, we have the order ID, and then from here it's we store the buyer, right? So who bought the book? That's very important to us. And then the books itself, like whether it's one or more books. It's very important to know. By this book, we can get all this various information from it. And then so we have two major methods: add book, add items and remove items. So you have the ability to add to your cart, and later on, if you decide that oh you don't want this book anymore, you're able to remove it. So that is very important. And then now we have the buyer. So one of the major roles of the user is the buyer. So the buyer can search for a book. So we have this thing called filters. There are two major types of filters. One of them is like a checkbox thing where like you check the category as well as the conditions, like for example fiction used or fiction new, or you can even check fiction used and new, and then it will give you that as well. And you can filter out, and then there's also a search bar at the bottom of it where you can search by the book name, by the book ID, by the author, different types of things. So that is what the search feature encompasses. It's like a method of functionality, and you're able to create an order. So a buyer can create an order because it's very important that a buyer can create an order in order to buy the book. And then from right here, we have this admin. The admin plays an important role. So the admin pretty much generates the reports. So we'll get the report from both the buyer information and the seller. So the seller can like do the various information of the books, like the availability, the author, all those types of data. And then we have the thing to export. So like let's say for example, once you generate the report, you have the ability to save it. Because a lot of times, like let's say for example, you could generate a report and then like it is not saved. So you have the ability to save it, and with that one you're able to export it to various different files, CSV, Excel, text files. Like even you can even save it to the database so it can be saved. And so like that is what that export is. And then we have the add books. So the admin can also add books as well. So like let's say for example, if there's a book that the seller did not add that just came in, the admin can also add the book as well. The admin can also delete a book too. The admin can delete a book that it created, or it can delete a book that the seller made as well. So like let's say for example, if the seller makes a book that is no longer available, like or not or no longer will be available, meaning that like they like let's say they don't have the rights or the book is not making as much sales, they can actually remove the book, in order to make inventory space for other books. And then we have add users. So the admin plays a role in like adding users who allows inside the actual like a bookstore application. pretty much. Like they can add a user, they're able to edit a user information. Like let's say for example, if the user has the ability to sell, the admin can remove or like add the ability to sell. If they're a buyer, they can add the additional ability to become a seller, or like if they are a seller and the admin feels like they don't want them to have the seller role, they can remove it. And they also have the ability to delete a user. So if a user like requests to be deleted, or the user is not really active, or stuff like that, the admin can remove it. So that just summarizes everything so far about this application. I hope you liked it. Please let me know. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye. Okay, now we will move on to the admin. The admin plays a very important part in this application. But the admin has the ability to generate a report. So it's going to take the information from the seller, like especially the book category. Like it's going to see how many copies, the availability. It's going to get the seller ID and the buyer ID, and many different types of information. And then from there, it will export the information. So the user has the ability to export. So like let's say for example, the user wants to like use the information for certain things, like to view it and to like mark view for report, or like financial reasons, they're able to export it out. Then then this user, the admin, has the ability to add a book. So just like how the seller can add a book, the admin can also add a book as well. And with this, they're able to add a book. They can edit the book and various things like that. And then they can edit a book. Then they can add a user. So the admin has the ability to add a user. So it's like let's say for example, if the user did not create an account and they want them to be able um, to actually like go through and use their application, they can give them like a username, a password, they can put in the credentials, stuff like that, and they're able to use it. They can also edit a user. So like let's say for example, if the user is a buyer and the admin is like, oh, he'll be better off as a seller, or if the user has the ability has is a buyer but wants to have the ability to be a seller, they can ask the admin, and the admin can accept or reject it, and then they'll become a seller. And then they can edit user. They can like they can edit the user information, and then they can also delete a user as well. So if the user requests to be deleted, the user also has the ability to delete their account too. But the admin can it can delete the user outright and everything that the user has made. So that wraps up and summarizes my presentation video on of how it is explained. I hope you like it. If you do, please let me know.